If you have ever said, "I don't understand why I can't let go of this person," I want you to hear this cleanly. Your brain is not confused. It is being trained. Avoidant hot and cold does not only create emotional pain, it creates a learning environment. It teaches an anxious nervous system that tracking is necessary, that hope is valuable, that small signals matter, that relief equals love, and that your stability is something you earn instead of something you receive. That is why you can be intelligent, self-aware, even successful in other areas, and still find yourself waiting for a message, replaying a conversation, checking for signs, rewriting the story in your head, and thinking one more chance will fix it. This episode is going to make this make sense without turning it into drama or blame, because the point is not to villainize avoidance or shame anxious attachment. The point is to name the mechanics so clearly that the spell breaks. When the spell breaks, you stop negotiating with crumbs. You stop calling suspense chemistry. You stop living inside a contract you never agreed to consciously. And you start building the only thing that actually heals attachment: a stable baseline. Let's start with what most people miss. The relationship is not only between two people, it is between two nervous systems. Anxious attachment regulates threat by moving toward. More contact, more clarity, more closeness, more reassurance. Avoidant patterns regulate threat by moving away. Less exposure, less intensity, less expectation, less emotional accountability. Put those two strategies together and you don't get love, you get a loop. One person seeks closeness to feel safe. The other person seeks space to feel safe. So the exact move that calms one person activates the other. And then both people start acting from protection instead of choice. This is why it feels like you can never relax, because you are not in a steady environment. You are in a negotiation between two survival strategies. Now, here is the first hard truth that changes the whole conversation. In this dynamic, your feelings are not the main problem. Your reward system is. Hot and cold is powerful because it hijacks the brain's reward schedule. When rewards are predictable, the brain relaxes. When rewards are unpredictable, the brain fixates. This is not a personality flaw. It is how learning works. Intermittent reinforcement is one of the strongest conditioning mechanisms we have. That is why people pull slot machine levers and keep hoping for the next win. And in avoidant hot and cold, the win is the warm message, the affectionate moment, the intense night, the deep talk, the apology, the sudden closeness. Then it disappears. The disappearance creates tension. The tension creates focus. The focus creates pursuit. The pursuit sometimes produces a reward again, and the loop strengthens. So when you say, "I can't let go," what you are often describing is not love in its healthiest form. You are describing a conditioned attachment loop where relief has become the reward. Relief feels euphoric. Your body interprets the drop in alarm as intensity. Your mind interprets intensity as special. And then you call it chemistry. Now, I want to slow down on one word because it explains why the CTR and watch time rise when you nail it. Contract. Most anxious people are not suffering because the avoidant is avoidant. They are suffering because they are living under a contract they never negotiated. The contract is silent. It is not written, it is not spoken, it is felt. And it usually sounds like this: if you want access to me, you must be low maintenance. If you want closeness, you must not ask for clarity. If you want commitment, you must not create pressure. If you want reassurance, you must earn it. If you want repair, you must wait until I'm ready. If you want consistency, you must accept inconsistency as temporary. And anxious attachment signs this contract because the anxious system prioritizes connection over comfort. It will take unstable connection over no connection. So you become adaptable. You become understanding. You become patient. You become the translator. You become the stabilizer. And the danger is that you start confusing your ability to endure with proof of love. Endurance is not proof of love. Endurance is often proof that you are trying to regulate yourself inside an unsafe rhythm. Now, why do avoidant patterns create this contract so often? Not because they are evil, because closeness activates exposure, exposure activates fear, and fear creates control behavior. Control behavior can be silence, it can be vagueness, it can be distraction, it can be disappearing after intimacy, it can be a sudden shift in tone, it can be making plans and then not following through. It can be giving you enough to keep you from leaving, but not enough to require them to fully show up. Their system is trying to keep connection without feeling trapped by expectation. The anxious system experiences that as hope, because any warmth feels like movement toward you. But warmth without structure is not movement. It is a moment. And moments do not build secure attachment. Patterns do. So here is the question that will end most debates you have with yourself. Do I feel more relaxed over time in this connection, or more vigilant? In healthy bonds, tracking turns off over time. You stop scanning. You stop reading microshifts. You stop needing proof. Your body begins to trust the environment. In hot and cold, tracking intensifies over time. That is a diagnostic. If you are becoming more vigilant the more you invest, you are not healing. You are being trained. Now, let's talk about how anxious attachment gets trained specifically, because this is where people blame themselves and lose the plot. Anxious does not mean weak. Anxious means your nervous system is sensitive to uncertainty, and it tries to stabilize uncertainty through proximity. The anxious system is brilliant at noticing shifts. It's a survival skill. The problem is when the environment rewards that skill. Hot and cold rewards hypervigilance. You notice the tone change, you adjust. You notice the distance, you repair. You sense something is off, you overfunction. And sometimes it works. You get the warm message, you get the reassurance, you get the return. So your brain learns a rule. When I scan harder, I can prevent loss. That rule creates obsessive thinking. It creates checking behavior. It creates the urge to send the text, to clarify, to fix, to keep the bond alive. And then you start telling yourself you are the problem because you can't calm down. But the environment is demanding that you stay alert. Your nervous system is responding accurately to an unstable rhythm. Now, here is the second hard truth. Avoidant hot and cold is not a puzzle. It is a training environment. Whatever you reward will multiply. If anxious attachment rewards distance with attention, distance will continue. If anxious attachment rewards vague returns with full access, returns will stay vague. If anxious attachment rewards silence with chasing, silence will remain a strategy. This is not punishment. This is mechanics. Patterns repeat because they work. People don't keep patterns because they are bad people. They keep patterns because the patterns get them what they want. Space without losing you. Comfort without accountability. Connection without consequence. So when you are waiting for them to change, you have to ask a brutal question. What am I making work for them? Because if the pattern works, it stays. Now, there is a painful paradox here. The more you love, the more you might accidentally reward the pattern. because anxious love often looks like over-giving, over-explaining, over-understanding, over-tolerating. And the avoidant system experiences that as pressure over time, even if you are being gentle. Not because your love is wrong, because your love becomes the bridge they can cross only when it suits them. That means you become the relationship. You initiate, you soothe, you plan, you repair, you translate. They come closer because you made it easy. But then the cost shows up. They start associating you with obligation and expectation, so they pull away to feel free again. That pull away triggers your anxiety. You respond by doing more, and the loop tightens. This is the overfunction withdrawal loop. It is one of the most common modern relationship traps, and it ruins people not because the love wasn't real, but because the structure was missing. Love without structure becomes a nervous system war. Now, let's define what structure means in this context, because most people confuse structure with being cold. Structure is not withdrawal. Structure is not games. Structure is not pretending you don't care. Structure is simply aligning access with behavior. It is deciding what gets closeness. Consistency gets closeness. Repair gets closeness. Clear communication gets closeness. Vague returns do not get closeness. Silence does not get closeness. Mixed signals do not get full access. That is structure. And structure is the only environment where an avoidant can choose you with less fear, because they are choosing into a stable system, not into chaos. This is why you don't fix hot and cold by becoming colder. You fix it by becoming steadier. Steadiness is calm. Steadiness is predictable. Steadiness is boundaries without rage. It is kindness without being easy. Now, let's talk about the psychology of waiting for change, because this is where the loop steals years. Waiting feels like love because it preserves the fantasy. It preserves the version of the story where your patience is rewarded and they become consistent. But waiting becomes self-betrayal when it requires you to lower your standards to keep the bond. Healthy patience has evidence and timeline. Self-betrayal waiting has endless extensions. It has you shrinking your needs and calling it maturity. And you can always justify it. They are stressed. They are busy. They are healing. They have trauma. And again, these stories can be true. But stories are not the test. Patterns are the test. If the pattern does not change, your compassion becomes compliance. And compliance is how you train your nervous system to tolerate instability. Now, here is the uncomfortable truth that breaks the spell. People don't change because you wait. People change when changing becomes more rewarding than staying the same. If their pattern continues to give them comfort and control while keeping access to you, there is no reason to change. And that is why anxious attachment must stop offering full access to part-time behavior. Because as long as you do, the pattern remains rewarded. This is not about withholding love. This is about telling the truth with your behavior. Your attention is valuable. Your intimacy is valuable. Your availability is valuable. If you give it away regardless of how they show up, you teach them that your needs are optional. Then you wonder why your needs keep being postponed. Now, I want to make this extremely practical because insight without a shift keeps you stuck. There are 3 moments in this dynamic where your decision determines the future. Moment 1 is after closeness. In hot and cold, the withdrawal often happens after the best moment. The anxious mind interprets that as a tragedy and tries to fix it. But the fix attempt often becomes pressure. So the right move is not to demand reassurance at the peak. The right move is to watch the pattern calmly and respond with structure. If they disappear after closeness, you do not chase. You let the pattern reveal itself. Moment 2 is when they return vaguely. Vague returns are one of the most addictive parts because they trigger hope. A like, a story view, a random check-in, a late-night message, a casual hello. If you respond with full emotional access, you reward the vagueness. So you respond, if you respond, with calm, minimal energy. You don't punish, you don't flood. You simply do not escalate intimacy without consistency. Moment 3 is when you feel activated. Activation is when anxious attachment becomes impulsive. You want to send the message, explain your feelings, clarify, fix. So you need one rule that saves you. Delay action when activated. Delay doesn't mean ignore. Delay means regulate first, then decide. When you are calm, you ask one question. What behavior am I rewarding if I send this? If sending it rewards withdrawal with attention, you don't send it. If sending it sets a clean standard without trying to control the outcome, you can send one short line. Then you stop. No follow-ups, no chasing, no long paragraphs. Because the moment you chase, you teach your nervous system that anxiety is a command. And you teach the other person that distance buys attention. Now, let's talk about closure, because anxious attachment keeps seeking it from avoidant patterns who rarely give it cleanly. Closure is not a conversation. Closure is a decision. Closure happens when you stop using photographs to predict the future and start using patterns. Patterns show what a person can sustain, not what they can feel in a moment. If you keep asking why, you will stay stuck, because avoidants often don't even know their full why. Their system reacts faster than their words. So replace why with what. What happened after closeness? What happened when I expressed a need? What happened when there was conflict? What happens when I ask for clarity? What repeats? Answering what honestly closes the loop, because you stop negotiating with mystery. Now, here is the part that most people avoid because it hurts. Ending hot and cold often means grieving the imagined future, not just the person. The imagined future is what keeps the bond alive. It feels real to your nervous system, so letting it die feels like death sometimes. Not because you are dramatic, because you are letting go of the you that was going to be chosen in that story. Many people keep a pocket of hope because grief feels too final. But that pocket of hope keeps you attached. So the healing is the willingness to let the fantasy end and then build your life anyway, in a grounded way. That is real power. Now, I want to address a question people ask quietly. Does this mean avoidants never change? No, people can change, but change has signatures. Real change does not require you to chase them into it. Real change shows up as increased consistency, increased willingness to repair, increased willingness to define, increased follow-through. Real change can handle your needs without labeling them as pressure. Real change is not only words, it is behavior plus repair. If someone returns but does not repair, that is not a return. That is a reset. Resets feel good because relief hits your nervous system, but resets keep you in the same contract. So you must become allergic to returns that come with the same contract. Your job is not to guarantee their change. Your job is to guarantee your dignity and your nervous system stability. Paradoxically, that is the only environment where an avoidant can choose you with less fear, because they are choosing into structure, not into chaos. Now, let's make the outcome simple. You want to be able to relax. Relaxation is not something you force with mindset. Relaxation is a physiological signal that says this environment is safe enough to stop monitoring. If you cannot relax around them, your nervous system is giving you an honest report. Either your history is being activated, or the pattern is truly unstable, or both. The solution is the same. You change the contract you live under. Stop rewarding inconsistency with full access. Stop converting small signals into proof. Stop making your mood the authority. Become steadier. Reward behavior. Reward repair. Reward consistency. And if the relationship cannot survive steadiness, then it was never stable enough to hold you. That's not bitterness. That's clarity. You are allowed to want love that is exciting and still safe. You are allowed to want intensity without vigilance. You are allowed to want closeness without paying with anxiety. The only way you get that is by refusing the contract that trains you to stay hooked. And the day you stop rewarding the pattern is the day your nervous system starts coming back to you. Welcome to PsychBond. You're safe here.